right, we're going to go welcome to the efficient irrigation class. I'm glad you guys made it out today in our beautiful air conditioned room. You know, we have a lot of garden events outside, but because it's summertime, we decided to do it in here today, but we did bring some of the garden in for you. And so the class today is going to be mostly on PowerPoint, but we're going to have a little bit of, you know, show and tell about how this stuff actually works, because irrigation can be a very intimidating topic. There's a lot of parts, there's a lot of different systems. And so my name is Tia Silvasy, and I'm a Florida Friendly landscaping agent here. And Florida Friendly is all about having a beautiful landscape while protecting the environment. And so it's very important for us to save water. It helps us to save money, and it also helps with the plant growth, because too much water can cause disease problems, rot, other problems. And today I have a couple helpers with the class. I have my garden technicians, Troy.
Hello.
And Dave.
Hi, Dave.
And then we also have Terry Thill, who's our partner with the Orange County Water Utilities Department. And I'm just gonna turn it over to her to give a little introduction, and she has a couple slides here before we get started. Are you ready, Terry? You want me to help you? No, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Water Surgeon. I work as water conservation coordinator. And how many people here are Orange County Utilities water customers? Not OUC, not City of Apopka.
You can't see.
You're Orange County Utilities. You're not Orange County. Okay, so I guess I'm talking to you. Wait, if you have any friends that are Orange County Utilities, that means anything that's in unincorporated Orange County. That means not the City of Apopka, not the City of Winter Garden, not the City of Orlando, anything outside. That's what unincorporated means. We have a program called Waterwise Neighbor program. And through this program, it's kind of like all of our programs combined into one name. We have rain barrel classes at least twice, sometimes 3 times a year, where we'll give people free to attend a webinar and you get a free rain barrel. We have, again, if you attend a webinar, Waterwise Neighbor program webinar, you can be eligible for a lot of freebies. We give away the efficient irrigation nozzle sprinkler heads, because unfortunately, a lot of the sprinkler systems out there are not efficient at all. So these are a lot more efficient. We give away free rain sensors. Does anybody know? Well, y'all know what a rain sensor is. It's the device on top of your roof, required by law, required to be functioning by law.
This is one of the rain sensors.
After about 2 to 3 years, there's a little device on the inside that just kind of crumbles because of the weather and the rain and the sun. You haven't checked it in about 3 years, it probably doesn't work. So it's very important to get it to work, and we will give you a free one. We won't install it for you, but you can just get your own person to install it for you. We also give away smart irrigation controllers. Anybody have one of those? Smart irrigation controller. Because some people like to be at work and they're like, "Oh, I need to change my timing. It's raining now. I need to turn it off." People like to be real techy and they want to do that kind of smart. It looks like an $80 or $100 value. So we give that away to our customers. What else do we have? And then indoors we give away shower heads. We give away those aerators for your sink. We have a lot of things that we want to.
How do we get it?
What?
How do we get it?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a piece of paper.
Okay.
Over there somewhere. Over there. Give you a piece of paper and a Waterwise Neighbor program. Every month we have a class. I think except for December. You call Gigi, who's the program administrator. So I wanted to let you know about that. See what's on the next slide here. And then Tia will go over this as well, but you all are abiding by the watering restrictions, right? Yay. I haven't had my system on all summer. Why would I have my system on? It's been raining so much. I know it's been kind of dry. It's been like 100 degrees, but I
do have a lot of shade trees, so that helps too. We tell people you can water 2 days a week. You don't have to water 2 days a week. We tell people actually you can water up to 1 day a week, up to 2 days a week. Maybe you water no days a week. You can save a lot of money if you don't water, obviously. So these are our restrictions. In Orange County Utilities, we have a water watch program. These are our contractors that patrol our neighborhoods day and night, every single day of the week for water violators. It's not because we want to violate people. We want to educate people because some people have lived in their community. I'm finding out this gentleman 2 weeks ago, he's lived in Orlando, Orange County for 6 years. He did not know about the restriction. He did not know that you're supposed to turn your system back to 1 day a week in November. He didn't know about that. I'm like, oh, okay. So we educated him. We only, after a first warning, we give him a first warning letter. So, hey, did you know? We have restrictions now. That's kind of their first warning. Within the next 3 years, if they get another violation, it's $25. And then subsequent violations are $25 fine. So again, it's not a moneymaker. It's just like, we want everybody to conserve water. And our next slide. We have a program for higher water users. And that's usually about 15,000 gallons or more. If someone consistently uses for about 3 months, 15,000 gallons or more. We can come out and we can make sure their timers set correctly to the correct days and the correct times, run times. We can check if there's obvious leaks. We're not going to dig in the ground and check if there's any leaks in the ground, but just obvious leaks when the system is run. But a lot of times, just because if a person can check their irrigation controller, that takes care of a lot of the problems with their high water usage. It really does. Do you have a backup battery in your irrigation timer? So there's a lot of things to think about. How many minutes is it? By law, you can't run a system more than 30 minutes each zone, but typically a rotor should run for about 30 minutes. A spray head, sprinkler head should run for about 15 minutes. All right, next slide, please. And then this is our Waterwise Neighbor program. You can call Gigi 254-9841 to register. You'll be eligible to receive these different things that I've already pretty much mentioned. I think, let's see, this is June. Oh, yeah, I think she just had her class yesterday. But anyway, now this is July. This is July.
It's July, yes.
So August, about the middle of the month, she seems to do her classes. And then, of course, it's no cost. And you'll learn other ways to save water. But today, everybody should have gotten a raffle after the end of the class. And it seems like you guys have the Mr. Landscaper out here. This is what you will be receiving. The Mr. Landscaper kit. If you win the raffle.
Oh,
Okay, and it's 25 feet of tubing. And you can test it out and see, well, gosh, do I like it? Do I want to buy some more? I think it's low, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think this Home Depot that is low. So maybe you'll win this today at the end of the class. And then I've got a couple efficient irrigation shut off nozzles, because of course you don't want to just run when you're watering. You want to be able to turn your nozzle, your hose off and on. I've got a couple of those, so we'll do the raffle at the end of the session. Thank you so much. All right,
Thank you, Gary. All right, so these are the 9 Florida-friendly landscaping principles, and today's class is really going to focus on principle number 2, which is to water efficiently. So landscape irrigation, up to 60% of residential water can be attributed, your water bill can be attributed to irrigation for outdoor, like lawn and landscape areas. So that's a lot, more than half of your water bill can be for the outdoor use. And sometimes you just set it and forget it, and people don't even know how to check to see if they have a leak or something. And so, there can be problems outside, and we'll go over some of those today. But, part of having a healthy landscape is getting the watering right, because watering is related to fertilizer. If you put a bunch of lawn fertilizer on and you water too much, then a lot of that will leach out and end up in our water bodies and be polluting. So where does our water come from? Well, it comes from our groundwater, and then even deeper down that, and the aquifer underneath here. And a primary source to recharge our groundwater and aquifer is the rainfall. And we get plenty of rainfall here. We get about the perfect amount of rainfall, actually, about 52 inches a year. And plants need about 1 inch of water per week. So 52 inches per year, 1 inch of water a week. That is perfect, but the only problem is that we don't get it evenly. And so in June, July, August, we get 8 inches per month. In January, February, March, we get like 1 or 2 inches a month. And so that springtime, that's really the critical period for irrigation, where you might need to supplement the rainfall with irrigation. In the summertime, like Terry mentioned, you can just shut the irrigation off. You're getting plenty of rain. The plants are way hydrated. That's why we have a lot of fungal problems here in the summer too. So looking in the future, this is the water project 2070. And so this was our 2010 baseline of water demand per gallons per day in Florida. And the trend for estimated for 2070 is that we're going to be short in our water supply. And so that's where water conservation comes in to help, fill that gap. So we have a lot of threats to our water supply. The biggest one is just our population growth, the increasing demand, also the impermeable surfaces, the concrete that's, the water is not soaking back into the earth, not recharging the aquifer and groundwater, and it's just running off, into the ocean. Once it's comes salt water, it's no longer fresh water. So we want as much of that to seep back in as we can. Also other things like pollution. A lot of our water bodies are impaired by high nutrient levels now. And so this is the topics we're going to cover today in our irrigation class. We're going to first just cover some very basic water saving strategies, and then we're going to talk more in detail about in-ground irrigation, which we have this display table here, and also micro irrigation, which we have a couple of things on this display table. So some irrigation factors to consider. Some things you do have control of and others you don't. So what you can control is what you're planting in your landscape. There are Florida-friendly plants that are drought tolerant, and they do well with very little supplemental irrigation. So choose more of those, less of the high maintenance plants that have a high demand for water. Also, where you place the plant is kind of part of that right plant, right place thing. The soil structure, you can add compost, you can add mulch, you can add supplemental water through your irrigation system. And some things that you cannot control is just like the weather in Florida, the temperature, the precipitation, the sunlight. For the most part, we have sandy soil, so you can add as much compost as you want, but it breaks down pretty fast. And then what is the drainage too? And the local water restrictions, like there are laws that mandate that you cannot, water more than 2 times a week right now. And so you need to follow those, just like we have the fertilizer ordinance that restricts the nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizer. So for a normal house, you may actually have several irrigation systems. Like here on our property here at the Extension Center, we have in-ground irrigation, we have micro irrigation, we have some kind of passive irrigation with berms and ditches. And so the in-ground is most popular for the lawn area, like where you want to cover a large area, whereas the micro irrigation is more popular for like potted plants or small landscape beds. Because as you see, when we get into the park, there's kind of a lot of little parts, and it can be a little bit higher maintenance per square foot area. And drip irrigation is popular in vegetable gardens, where you just have a long row of corn and you want it irrigated. That works great for there. So some of the basic irrigation, fundamental theory is that we want to water with the season. As I said, we're getting too much rainfall right now in the summer. So no need to water unless you're like establishing some plant or planting some seedlings. We still water the seedlings that we're starting in our nursery, a couple times a day, because they're just baby and they're in small pots. We still have to water our container gardens because those pots can dry out if we don't get rain for a day or two. Watering early in the morning is the best time for the water not to evaporate. So no watering after 10 a.m. The best time to water is in the morning, like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And it's good if you can visually see it too. Like if you set your timer, the time you're like leaving for work and okay, the watering looks good, or no, I have a broken head over here. Sometimes if people put it on at like 5 a.m. and nobody's ever awake, it's hard to see that there's a problem. No watering in the middle of the day between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. because that's when the transpiration is highest and we will lose that water. It won't go in the ground, it's gonna go poof up in the air. And so if you don't get it in the morning, the second best time to water is in the evening after 4 p.m. I mean, now it's light until like 8:30 at night, so you know, something at night. But plants do not really like water sitting on their leaves at night. It helps to increase fungal problems. So, I mean, Mother Nature waters all the time. We got a rainstorm last night, but if we can limit the nighttime dampness, that's better for plant health in general. So here in the winter, it's important to know that the plants go dormant, even though we're in Florida, we're in a subtropical climate. The plants, you know, the trees lose their leaves, the lawn isn't growing so much. And so you don't really need to water because the plants are not actively growing. There's a slogan we have like skip a week in the winter. You can go, you know, 10 days, 2 weeks, no water because nothing is growing, the temperatures are cooler, and the plants will be just fine. You know, so getting to learn how to visually look at plants and be like, oh, that plant is wilted, not because it's noonday sun, we all wilt in the noonday sun, but like in the first thing in the morning or the evening, if you see your plant is wilted then, or do the finger test in the pot to see if it's dry, then you might need to water. So we talked about this watering time. And so remember, water in the morning is the best. And some other strategies here, instead of having like individual plants around your landscape, if you can make one landscape bed, you know, that is going to be more efficient for your watering. And also eliminating these like little tiny strips because the concrete doesn't need water, the pathway doesn't need water. You know, if you put some drought tolerant plants or even just turn that into a pathway there, that would be more efficient for watering. And there's all kinds of things like this little patch, we landscapers, we hate those little patches because you're going to have to edge that whole section. There's always going to be weeds encroaching. It's hard to hit with the lawnmower. Then you have to try to weed whack it. Like it's just a problem area that if you can eliminate it or just put more of these liriopes or something up here and make it more low maintenance, that would be great. Same thing with this one, you know, landscapers hate this because then they have to weed whack and edge around here. And especially like this tree even has plants, but if the tree didn't have plants, you weed whack in the edge of that tree and that hurts the tree growth. So what we call that is hydrozoning. We want to group all the plants together that have the same water needs. Turf in general has a high water need, whereas landscape shrubs and trees have a low water need, like they're really more sustainable. They need like 2 to 3 times less water than the lawn does. So the rain gauge, everybody got a rain gauge in your little packet, and this is a very simple tool to see how much water did we get by rainfall, and then to make your landscape irrigation decisions based on that. So how much water did the plant need every week? 1 inch, right? So if we get 1 inch of rain today, then you're good for a week. If we only get 1/8 of inch rain today and it doesn't rain for the next 3 days, we might need to water. You don't absolutely have to water, but then you're kind of checking it. Okay, we haven't gotten very much water. Let me check on the plants because the drought tolerant plants, they'll be fine. The big trees with big roots, they'll be fine. It's more like the smaller plants and the ones in containers or small pots, you're gonna have to check those more frequently. So we discussed some of these water saving strategies like the rain sensor and the hydrozones and what you can do in the landscape bed. Next, we're gonna talk about the irrigation parts themselves, the in-ground, using the low volume sprinkler heads like this one, and the rain sensors, and calibrating your system and setting your timer. So types of irrigation devices, there's always the hand watering method. Does anybody here do hand watering? Yeah, that's what I have at my house, hand watering. In-ground irrigation system, how many people have the in-ground? All right, about half of you guys. And anybody doing micro irrigation?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, well, maybe you'll win the prize today. So it's not that one is good or bad or better or worse, but I find that the in-ground irrigation is good if you have a large, turf area that you want watered and you have a high level of expectation, like you want it to look good. Like our grass right outside here has the in-ground sprinklers because we're an extension center and people think our grass should look good. So we make the grass look good. If you live out in the country and you have a Bahia grass lawn like me and nobody sees it and nobody cares, then no irrigation is just fine. My Bahia lawn does perfectly fine. Absolutely no supplemental irrigation and rainfall. But I'm not trying to impress people. I'm not Disney World. So it functions just fine for me. So, different gardens require different irrigation systems. So based on these three gardens, how would you design an irrigation system? Some of them are irregular shapes. This one's kind of curvy. This one is a row crops. That's pretty straightforward. Like I would definitely do drip there. But these other two, you could use a variety of different irrigation systems. You could put one in-ground sprinkler and spray the whole entire area. Or you could put lots of little micros, like 3 per bed or something like that, and spray them because you don't really want to get the pathways wet. But it's kind of personal preference. Which method do you like? So talking about the in-ground system, we call it automatic sprinkler system. These systems just use more water because they output more water, more volume per minute, more volume per hour for large areas. And so they use more water than non-automatic, like using hand watering methods or micro irrigation. And so that's fine, but if you want to save water, consider reducing the amount of automated irrigation area you have. So the rain sensor, we were pointing that out earlier. This is required by law that you have some type of shut off device for when it rains, you're gonna shut off the water. And these little quirky things is what will make the spring get triggered to send the signal down into the actual timer. They do go bad every couple of years, so it's a good idea to have them inspected, once a year. There's also the soil moisture sensors, which is a little metal probe that's going into the ground. And this is supposed to be lasting a little bit longer, but this is less popular, but we're now recommending this over these rain sensors in IFAS. So you just like peel off the sod and put a little cut right there and then insert it down in there and they last a little bit longer. So if you want to calibrate your irrigation system and see how much water you're actually using, remember how much water the plants need a week? 1 inch. So we're going to run the zone, like Terry said, 15, maybe 30 minutes if you have rotors. You put out these little tuna cans, maybe like 10 of them or the solo cups, and you run the zone and then you just take a ruler and measure how much water is in there. And you should, if you're running your irrigation twice a week, you should be getting a number like 1/2 inch, because 1/2 inch plus 1/2 inch equals that 1 inch. 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, per irrigation event. Now, if you're getting over 1 inch of water, when you do this calibration test, that's too much. And you want to maybe reduce the time or put on more efficient heads. Like the easiest thing is just to reduce the runtime on your irrigation clock. And just by reducing the runtime a little bit, you know, you can save a lot of water. So here is it again with the cans that you catch and you run the zone. And then the last step is just adjusting your run time. So you get that 1/2 to 3/4 inch every time. So we have some different types of timers. We have a battery operated timer. If you have like your irrigation system, it's not from your whole house, but it's just a one zone, like out in the back, and you can put the battery operated timer right out there and it hits that solenoid switch to turn on the water. The more traditional kind are these irrigation controllers. And you should have some basic knowledge of this. Who has an irrigation controller? All right, so you should know how to turn it on and off, right? This is system off, so off, and then run is on. So at least click it between on and off. Like right now, I just got an inch of rain at my house yesterday. I can just turn it off for a week or for a month. When it starts to dry off, turn it back on. And the other thing you should know is just how to turn it on manually. That way you can see if you have any leaks. Just switch it to manual, it will click on, it will run through the zones. And then the other thing you might need to adjust is the watering days. Because in the summertime right now, we can water 2 days per week. But in the wintertime, we can only water 1 day a week. So you're gonna need to go in there and change that based on the water regulations. So next I'm gonna play this little video and hopefully it will work.
Today, I'm talking about the basic parts of a sprinkler system. Adrian Sanchez here for Sprinkler Warehouse. Let's get started. An automatic sprinkler system is made up of 5 basic components: timer or controller, the pipe or tubing, the valves, the sprinkler heads, and a backflow preventer. Let's start with the water flow. Your water source, whether it's a pump, well, or your local water utility, supplies water to your main line. The main line will branch off to your business or residence and to your irrigation system. PVC pipe will carry your water to a backflow preventer. The purpose of the backflow is to prevent water that may be contaminated inside your sprinkler system from flowing back into your drinking water. It's also usually where you shut off the water to your irrigation system. From the backflow, the water flows through your pipes to the valves. The controller, also called a timer, is the brain of the sprinkler system. It tells the valve when to open or close. Each valve controls a group of sprinklers. Each group is called a zone or a station. When the timer reaches a start time, it sends a signal telling the valve to open. The valve opens, releasing the flow of water into a zone. Water flows through the pipes to the sprinkler head. The water pressure activates the sprinkler heads in the zone and they begin water. When the end of the runtime is reached, the timer sends a signal to tell the valve to close. Once the water stops entering the pipe in the zones, water pressure inside the zone decreases and sprinkler heads disengage. The process repeats for each zone in the system. You'll use PVC pipe anywhere in line before the valve. That means from your water meter to where you branch off to your irrigation system to backflow to your valves. After the valve, you may use either PVC or poly tubing, also called buddy pipe. Pop-ups hide underneath the ground until the zone is activated, while shrub-type sprinklers are fixed on shrubs. Pop-ups are used for lawns and low-growing flower beds and ground covers. Shrub-style sprinklers are elevated about the level of the plants on a shrub stick. This allows the sprinkler to spray over the plants and shrubs. Rotor type sprinklers use a rotating stream or multiple streams to water the lawn or plantings. They are typically used to water areas over 15 feet in width. Sprays send a fixed water pattern, not unlike a shower head. Sprays are typically used for smaller areas. Remember, Sprinkler Warehouse is everything for your irrigation needs, so your trees, lawn, flower beds, and gardens are lush and beautiful. And if you have any questions about any of our products, chat with one of our superb customer service agents on sprinklerwarehouse.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for helpful tips, tutorials, and general sprinkler instruction. For Sprinkler Warehouse, I'm Adrian Sanchez, the Sprinkler Warehouse Pro. Later, irrigator.
So, that's how it looks like underground and figuring out how to connect it all is a piece of art right there. So next I'm gonna invite Troy up and he's gonna tell you a little bit more about the difference between spray heads and rotors and how to connect it all together.
Hello, everybody. My name's Troy. I'm one of the two clowns that work out here sometimes. Hi, Dave. But anyway, the spray heads, like he was talking about, when you come off your house and you're putting new irrigation in or something, in that thing, when you come off that, we usually come off the main line that's going into your house. We'll come off of that. Before we hook up anything, we will hook that straight up to your backflow preventer. You've seen that in the film right there. That keeps any of your backflow backing back up into your house, backing into your drinking water and anything like that. That helps. I had a backflow preventer, but I've got it misplaced somewhere. I can show you.
Excuse me, Troy. So some of the residential area, they use the reclaimed water. So
Reclaimed
when you
water.
use reclaimed water, you wouldn't have the.
Actually, they do have kind of a backflow in that spot of usually. So a lot of the backflows where they first started using was in ground. You couldn't see them.
Oh, okay.
They started having us put them above ground because it was easier for the inspector to drive by and he could look at it without getting out of his air conditioned car and checking it. So he started doing that way. So that was back when I was doing a lot of irrigation back in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, a lot of that, most of your stuff you do have backflow, even in your faucet that's coming outside your house. You have this little thing capped and hooked to the end of the faucet where you hook your hose up to. That helps prevent water from backflowing into your faucets too. So a lot of them will. So that's one of them. Then once you go into that, you start putting your system into the ground. First, the thing you want to do before you do anything is plan. Where do you want your spray heads? Where do you want your rotors? Because your rotors, like they were talking about on there, a lot of these rotors will shoot out quite a ways. I've seen rotors from 25 feet up to 40 feet. And what rotors do, and I've started using MP rotors, which I had up here. MP rotors, I like using right now because MP rotors kind of spread the water out as it rolls. I don't know if everybody knows what those are. They've been kind of being used in the last, I'd say 8 years or more into the houses because these spray heads like this, you notice when they come on, you see a big, large spray head blowing out and it just kind of covers. It covers good, but it just floods everything at one time. MP rotors, when they pop up, it comes up and sends out a bunch of little streams comes out, not in just one spot. Well, them little streams actually kind of rotate like this very slowly. And that actually helps the water percolate into the ground instead of that water running in one spot and a lot of it running off into your driveways, running off into your waterways, everything like that. The MP rotors will let it percolate in the ground a little bit longer. So you're not having a ton of rain. So that's why they're saying those are more efficient, especially in yards now. And I've seen MP rotors being used not in just small areas and small yards. I'm seeing them used in large yards now. Yes.
So somebody mentioned the time restriction on how long you could run your
Yeah, your other, yeah.
How long you can run your spray heads. So how do these fit into that?
The MP rotors, they actually have to be run a little bit longer because of the time they have to go in. What you have to do is kind of judge. You might add, because you can take an MP rotor, you can take this one out and add 2 MP rotors in the same spot as this one head was doing. So you can actually run less time on that one spot and still get the good coverage that you need. I've done a lot of that where I've taken the rotors out, which you cannot run. I cannot run a rotor and an MP rotor on the same head, on the same systems. What that does, that takes pressure away from your MP rotors too, and takes pressure away from this. So you can't run it, if you're gonna run NP rotors, you wanna run 100% NP rotors on that one system. And, the rotors we have, we got several different kinds. You can have some that will shoot up to about 8 to 10 feet. Or you can adjust it even farther down, or you can have some that shoots up to 40 feet, like I said, 30 to 40 feet. And that it runs really well. I've seen a lot of yards now going through Belle Isle. They're adding a lot of that to their houses where it's getting good coverage. Instead of having just one head sitting on this one side, they'll add another head opposite on the other side. And as they crisscross, you're getting just as much water as just with that. But you're also saving about 30% on your water bill. Because you're not using as much water with water bill spots. You know, it sounds funny where you have to run it longer than this. But while you're running it longer, it's percolating and it's getting down deep into the ground. So those plants and trees and grass will take root farther down. Because the more you water in one spot, your root system is going to be real high and it's not going to be going down deep. It's going to stay up there where that water is on top of the ground. So always remember that MPs work really well. And there's a lot of different ones that you can use. You can use them on heads like this, which I have here. These are the newer ones, which you can install. And I do have something set up right here. If you ever want, if you're not sure what you're looking at, I got some set up here where I can take it out and hook it up for you. You can see what the MPs look like compared to the sprays. Because like the sprays we have in certain areas, they work good in certain areas in your landscape because they spray out. You can see them just nice, straight fanned out, and you can adjust them different ways. Does still work best in certain areas. It depends on the plant. But like Tia was talking about, knowing your plants, what you put in, and how much water they actually need. Because you don't want to buy a plant over here like some heavy watering plant that loves water, it grows like crazy, like a rubber tree plant growing nuts. And you put another plant over here like a cactus next to it because it's so beautiful, it's got beautiful blooms and stuff. They're not going to take the same kind of water. So when you plan your landscape with your irrigation, because I'm telling everybody that used to, everybody would throw a basic irrigation system into a house. Doesn't care what kind of plant you put in. We always, because I've done the irrigation, I've done landscaping, I've done the whole 9 yards to put a new house in. They put the basic irrigation system in, put the basic plants in. It doesn't matter if this plant likes it dry, if this plant likes it wet, doesn't care. Didn't care to the builders. They just stuck it in there. But nowadays, I've noticed a lot of these builders and these contractors and homeowners are getting wise about how their irrigation is going in. They plan out their beds. They're actually taking out more sod, which is I agree with. You don't have to have a 50% of your yard or 100% of your yard nothing but sod. Cut that darn sod down, and that's, to me, that's a big waste of money. Because if you look at your electric bill and you look at your water bills and stuff, when it first started, reclaimed water was cheap. It's not cheap anymore. They're charging quite a bit for reclaimed water. But you cut that grass down, you're going to cut probably 40% right there out of your water bill. Because you can take all that water away from that. But you can still use that irrigation under that ground and veer it off to different areas that you can do for islands that you want to put in. So always remember that. Because me, I hate sod. The little thing right here, the water sensor here, supposed to shut your clock and stuff off. It hooks right into the back end here. It's actually really simple to install. It shows you these new clocks and stuff they have. They really come up with something that you can really read. You can tell what's going where without getting the book out, trying to look up all this technical stuff. Good for me. But on this, like she was talking about, the water will start entering in here, and there's a little tab right up here at the top, and it clicks. You can hear it click in here. And when it clicks, what that does, it sends electrical system down to your clock, and it automatically shuts your clock completely off. Me personally, with my clocks and stuff, I turn them off manually. If I know I'm gonna get a bunch of rain one day, like all these storms we have, I'll just shut my clock off. Instead of depending on this. These do last about a year or so, but they don't last forever. They break quite a bit that I know of, yeah. So
So do you replace the whole unit then when you?
this right here, yeah, what it is, it bolts up to the roof of your house
Mhm.
or wherever a high spot is. It's not over, no trees or nothing. It's in an open area. And this wire will run down the side of your house into the back of the clock.
Mhm.
That's how that hooks up.
So you just take the whole thing out?
I think she was asking, do you have to replace the whole thing, but isn't there just, you can't.
No, you can replace, yeah, there's a piece inside here you can take out and replace. All it is, it's like a, it's almost like a little sponge, not sponge, but cork, yeah, corking in there. Yeah, and they will go bad in it. Most of the time, and a lot of homeowners unfortunately fall for the thing where they'll tell them, hey, they'll have to replace this, or they'll have to replace the clock. That's why Tia was telling you, get to know your irrigation system, know everything about it if you possibly can. And always, I tell everybody, and anything I tell anybody about on irrigation, check your irrigation once, twice a month at least. Walk around your yard. There's a manual thing on here you can turn on, let it run manually. You or your husband or wife, whatever. Walk outside, watch them sprinklers pop up. You see a sprinkler popping up and it comes up, and you're starting to see water blowing all out the sides of it. That sprinkler that's no good. Because we've got, in Florida, we have a ton of sand here. The sand eats away everything inside these rubber pieces inside here in our heads.
Mhm.
And so, but you don't have to take this whole head off. You don't have to dig this whole head out. The simplest way to replace this head, just screw the top off like that. Get the same kind of head. And you can screw another one right back into the top of it. So you don't have to dig the whole head out of the ground.
Sweet.
Because I see a lot of people saying, well, you got to replace the whole head.
So you just replace something inside?
You're gonna replace the guts inside, and what that is, you're getting all new. Like, there's rubber rings, see all the rubber rings all up in the bottom, back of this?
Yeah.
That's what grinds down over time, as each time it opens up. We have a lot of them here,
So do you just replace the ring itself, the rubber ring itself, or?
just
the-
replace all the guts. I always replace the whole thing. It's not gonna hurt you.
So you can buy just the guts to replace it?
Some places will do that, some places I just keep this on hand. Because when I went out in the field, instead of me spending 30 minutes trying to dig up around this head, trying to dig it up out of the ground.
Mhm.
I'll dig it up about halfway, work this thing around where it's just gonna be solid. You can unscrew it and put a whole new head in it, or you don't have to dig it up at all. Just screw the top off,
Mhm.
take the same kind of sprinkler head, put the top on, put the guts and top all in there.
Okay, so when you go purchase, you have to purchase the same, like one whole thing.
You can,
but
yeah,
just
most
put-
of them, yeah, just go ahead and get the two of them like that.
Okay.
And
you
that
just
makes it
take
so
the
easy. If
guts.
you don't have the time to dig it out,
Mhm.
it's easier to do it that way. I've done that with a lot of job sites,
Mhm.
which in my job sites, when I did repairs, everything I took out of that, I can reuse, because in commercial, we can order all the little rubber pieces and everything else, which most people don't want to spend the time to replace all the rubber pieces. Because there's not a whole lot of times you're gonna do it.
Right.
Because most irrigation systems, especially if you're looking at new, you're looking at probably 5-10 years down the road before a lot of that stuff's starting to mess up.
Mhm.
Another thing I wanted to show you right offhand. When installing irrigation, this right here is called flex tube. You can move it every which way you want, anywhere you want. When I replaced a lot of these, most places will take the pipe, run it right up close to your driveway, come off that without the flex tube. Come off of the pipes, run it up and put a head on the top. Well, if you accidentally run over top of that head, guess what's gonna happen? That's gonna break, just not your sprinkler head, it's gonna break your pipe. So you have to dig this whole thing up.
Mhm.
If I had this flex tube, I enter this flex tube in here like this. Instead of putting the pipe next to the driveway, this flex tube would go over there. And of course, I don't have that part either. But I would, it's a little slip-on pipe right here,
Like on that thing.
something like this right here. And what that does, I'll glue to it. And I will take it and then screw the head on top of that. It's a female adapter that goes onto that. I screw the head on that. So that head gets run over by accident or a little bit or something. That tube's gonna give. It's not gonna give to a point where it's breaking pipes. So these are really good to have, flex pipe here. Anytime you replace anything close to walkways, driveways, and places like that. And you can also use a lot of this and kind of snake around big branches, big roots, things like that. That helps out a lot too. So that does really well. And this right here is a pressure valve. Because most houses you're gonna have, you got up to about 65, somewhere around 80 pounds of pressure coming out of them faucets. Some of your heads do not require that. Yes, it's gonna work just fine when you first put it on, but over time, that high pressure wears out the heads and wears out the springs in some of your thing. So you can use the different ones, they come in different ones. This cuts it down to 20 pounds per square inch. So what that's gonna do, that's gonna be enough to run you a few irrigations heads that's popping up. Because most of these heads like this one right here, you're looking at about 30, well, let's say 20 to 40 pounds. That'll pop those heads right up and work the ways they should be. So. And I had, I've got different heads up here I can show you later on. Some adjustable heads, they cost just a little bit of money, but you can take it, this adjustable head, you can adjust it from down to 0. You can adjust it all the way to 360 and any of that, because you can notice your irrigation spot, especially around your house, you're not going to have a perfect, angle or something like that. This right here will adjust your head on.
Is that the spray head? Or
This is a spray head. Yeah, the spray head, this is the MP rotors right here. This is right here, and I'll show you the different ones on that. But on these spray heads right here and the MPs, to adjust the spray on, once you get them all installed, like this right here. I've got this installed right here. I've got a screw adjusted. There's a little screw right at the very top where you can adjust the spray and spray way out, or you can adjust the spray to spray way in. Depends on what you're looking for in your irrigation spot. But for it to do that, to be adjusted, you have to have a screen. There's a screen that hooks up to the bottom of these. If that screen's not on this, you cannot adjust the spray on your heads. Same thing with the rotors, same thing with your MPs. To adjust the sprays on them, you've got to have that little filter. And to change it, if you say your spray head's not working right, all you have to do is unscrew this off the top of it, pull this thing out, clean it out real good, or replace it with a new one. That'll save you a ton of money right there. If it's clogged and all your water is just running right down the side of the pipe, you're just wasting money, wasting water. And that's the main thing we're trying to keep from. But Dave is going to talk to you a lot about the different clocks you could use. Tia came up with one with the node. I use these when I did big commercial jobs where we had to do landscape, and we did a roadway that was probably about 20 miles long. Each zone we had to put in, because there was no electricity going anywhere out there. This is what we use for our electricity to turn our irrigation on and keep the roadsides wet. This runs off a battery. It's a DC current. Biggest thing about DC and AC current, there's two different kind of solenoids here. The solenoid for the DC current is always going to be black and red. The one for the AC currents are always going to be one solid color, red. Red, or they could be just solid black. So always remember, if you put something together and saying, I got this, I put this note on and it's supposed to be working, Troy told me it was going to work. And they're real simple to use. And it's not working, I'm gonna go cuss him out next week. Remember, if you put the wrong solenoid on this thing, it's not going to work. AC, DC. So. Is there any questions about anything that I got? Anything on the heads?
The spray head you have there, it's just like a one small black thing,
Yes,
but
this is your spray head itself right here on top.
that's directly on the PVC pipe. But there's a spray head like that, you have a cylinder.
Oh,
Are
that
they
right there,
same
that's
thing
this.
inside?
This right here, when the pressure hits it, will pop up.
Oh, so the other one is not used.
Yeah, you can use this in the ground too.
Mhm.
This right here, heads like this right here, this is mainly for risers, like behind your hedges and stuff.
Okay.
So you'll have to do that. Now, this will not screw directly in to your pipe. This
So-
won't screw into your pipe. You have to have another attachment, it's called scrub adapter.
Mhm,
Scrub adapter, you slide in your filter,
mhm.
put your head on the top of that, right like that, your spray nozzle. And then it all ties in.
So for this other one, do they have the filter also in there?
This one right here, this don't have no head on it yet, but what I do, I'll unscrew this, this is a safety thing.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of times, if you install new irrigation or a broken pipe you had to fix,
Mhm.
leave these on here, this is what's gonna come on your head when you buy it. Leave them on there, turn your irrigation on, what this is gonna do is flush all the dirt out of your system. Without losing that head, see that head's, every time the pressure drops, that head drops down. This helps you pick up that head easy and hold it up, well, easier. But, and this little tool right here helps hold it when if it's only you out there, you can take this little tool right here. Place it on here like that. Now, you can work on that without worrying about that slide.
On the one you have right there, that rotary one right there,
Uh-huh.
does that have adjustments in it that it could be nothing on the back, just do here?
They do have some different ones like that. They have some of them, that's MP right there. Let's see how it sprays out.
Yeah.
They have some that can be adjusted a little bit, but not a whole lot. Yeah, it's
That
not
one
like,
up against the wall.
Yeah, if you got it up against the wall, they do have like, ones that's just halves,
Yeah.
waters, and then they have three.
But it's not gonna be the same type of, with water moving.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah, they got several different kinds of that, yeah. Yeah, and they're coming out with new ones all the time, so. But
Those
those are,
those are the more efficient.
those are the more efficient. Since I've been using them, and I've been using them for probably 8 years now, I like them,
Yeah, everybody's going for that kind.
yeah,
Question,
same one.
question. Can you put like, say, one system with the rotaries and then connect to the drip irrigation on the other, on the same system, but using the pressure?
Yeah, the pressure's gonna drop on you. Me and Dave has done that before.
Uh-huh.
We come off the irrigation, it's just got the pop-ups on it. And then we decided we got another plant over here that needs a little extra water that we just put in.
Mhm.
We did cycle into that. We like cut into it, we put a head in there, and I put drip irrigation around it.
And just put a pressure,
Actually, there's a pressure switch in there, with pressure area for that right there.
Mhm.
But it doesn't, drip doesn't take as much pressure away from it as much. Especially if you do just small areas,
Mhm.
so that saved me and Dave a lot.
So if I put it at the end, for example, I have a system with the rotors, and then at the very end, I just want to add
Just a little
a
way.
drip. Yeah.
If you add a little bit, you shouldn't have no problem. It's still gonna drip out. And
Okay,
Dave will talk to you about all that.
okay.
Generally not recommended to kind
No.
of mix and match this.
Yeah, they don't like matching, mismatching, stuff like that. Honestly, I have done it, but you gotta be careful of what you do.
All right,
Okay,
thank you, Troy.
thank you.
All right, so next, I'm gonna just finish up this. So here's that sprinkler heads we have for our lawn here, and Troy talked a little about the maintenance. So We got a lot of sand in our water, make sure you're, checking those screens, learn how to check the screens. And check for leaks and breaks and obstructions, and if you run over the nozzle, just always check it. There's no such thing as an irrigation system that you just leave it alone and it works great. It's a daily thing here in our garden. It's just something you get into the habit of checking your plants, checking the watering system, and learning how to work with the different heads. Here's a little bit in more detail. You can see the screens get clogged, so you can just pick that out, spray it off. And there's a lot of screens, in the different heads, or even just plugging up something that doesn't work anymore and checking on your timer, your battery, or the connection, the rain shut off. And sometimes people just flush them, and occasionally too. So next I'm gonna move into micro irrigation. Micro irrigation is maybe the best system if you have small gardens, if you're doing vegetable gardens or raised gardens or container gardens. And it's kind of defined as a low volume, low flow system. Instead of gallons per hour, these are putting out just gallons. Instead of gallons per hour, these are putting out like small gallons per minute. I think I said that right. And this is helpful, for small areas and getting the water exactly where you need it. That's why it's more efficient. Some benefits of micro irrigation is you're not watering like the whole entire area, so there could be less weeding. You're not getting all the plant foliage wet, so less disease problems, and just reduced evaporation overall because the water is down by the roots, where the plants want it. So here is our vegetable garden out in our exploration gardens. If you have time after the class, you can walk out there and see it. And this entire garden is irrigated by different types of micro irrigation. So we don't need to water the mulch pathways. If we had an in-ground system, it would just be watering everything and there'd be tons of weeds growing in here. But with these microsystems, you can see the little micro spray heads here. We can just water our little square foot garden here. We can water each little individual rain barrel over here. We can set things up in the raised beds and the row crops. And so I'm going to go into a little bit about the three main types of micro irrigation: the drip line, micro sprays, and bubblers, in which in each of these types, there's a lot of different kinds. So after I'm done, Dave is going to show you a little bit more detail about the actual micro irrigation parts. The drip tubing is good for row crops, long runs, whereas, it can be anywhere from 300 to 500 feet. It's available in 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch diameters. And then you can space these emitters, like the little spot where the water comes out. They have them, every 6 inches, every 9 inches, all the way up to every 2 feet. So depending on what you're growing, if you're growing squash, which is going to be on 3-foot centers, you might want to go with the 18-inch one, and then it will be every other. If you're growing something like carrots that you plant on 3-inch centers, you might want to go with the smallest, the 6-inch one. But either way, they'll cover the whole area. And the flow rate is very low, 1/2 to 1 gallon per hour. So out of all the irrigation, the drip line, you'll probably have to run the longest time. You might even run that, an hour per zone. So here's like what it looks like, one drip line here, and it's getting the water out, and we have these squash plants planted next to it. You can see the dark part is the wet, and then the lighter part is the dry. Here we're using it with our green beans. It's good for established plants, but as the plant grows more and bigger, you might need to increase the irrigation time. Whereas the small baby plants, more frequent, less watering time, but this, like big collard greens, longer run time, so that water has more time to soak out and down for the roots. And then at the very end of the drip line, you can pinch it off or use one of these stopper plugs. Here we have the battery timer for the drip line. So that just comes out of a hose spigot and then down, and then the drip lines run off of that. And that's something you can use. It's a couple AA batteries. And And those cost about $30. So here we have the grow boxes in our vegetable garden, and these have their own little tubes and drip line that goes into this water reservoir. So you can see them multiple connected together. And this is how the irrigation usually works. There's like a line, you know, you can draw it out in a diagram. And here's an on-off switch right here. Then we have that little spaghetti tube coming in that kind of drips right in these grow boxes. Boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, and then this one has its own line like that. The micro sprays, these are these little heads like this, and these are good, like they're all just different for different uses. These are really good where you just have like one container over here and one container over there. But you can put several in an area. Like we could do this whole row on micro sprays and just put one here, one over here, and so forth. They're usually attached to a stake or a riser, and so this can be problematic. It's good for low growing plants, but if you have, you know, your colored green plant gets really huge, then the plant might block the water spray. So that's an issue that you have to watch out for. And again, these have different watering patterns. It's very confusing trying to buy this, but if you get like a kit, like the Mr. Landscaper, you know, that you'll be good with one of those. And you'll hear these have all these different kinds of terminology, micro sprays, micro jets, misters, spinners, some of them spin, or like micro sprinklers. And this all refers to different types of micro sprays. A lot of terminology here. So here's some of the use in our garden. Here's our little rain barrels cut in half with the micro sprays in each of these. We have this raised square foot garden, and this has some micro sprays. And so you just want to look for the spray pattern, and some of them are adjustable, some of them are not. And you can see the timer here that clicks on that solenoid. We have this on the timer too. The third main type is the bubblers, and the bubblers are good because they can emit from like 0 to 26 gallons per hour. Whereas the drip and the micro spray are less volume. The bubbler actually is better for like larger plants. If you have shrubs, if you have trees, like a row of blueberries or oak trees or something, you can use these bubblers and you just twist the top to increase or decrease the water flow. So these are good for container gardens. They can come on the little stake, or they can punch directly into the poly line. And these also come in different patterns, kind of like the Archie pattern or the umbrella pattern. So a lot of different ways these come. And here's the tree bubbler here. That's also adjustable. And then when you decide your tree is done getting watered and it's well established, you can put a cap on that. So it's not even watering, or you can screw it all the way down to no water. So next I would like to invite Dave up to tell us a little bit more about these parts, you know, in real life here. Welcome, Dave.
Boy, thank you. First off, I'd like to, with Troy and the backflow issues, sorry to hear that, Troy, that you're having those backflow problems. But there is a good doctor that you probably can see.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, the jokes aren't gonna get any better, guys, so. Don't have laugh. Okay, get that out of your system. I know. Okay. All right, so micro irrigation. What's good about it? Well, it's water efficient, okay? And it's cheap. Yay, everybody likes cheap, right? Especially in today's time. I've had the disadvantage of working for nonprofits, all right, which generally we start the project with $0. All right, what's the budget? Well, we don't have one. Oh, okay, great, yay. All right, so when I was at the Last Chance Ranch, we started off, we did community service. A church wanted us to put in irrigation for their bedded areas, and they didn't have any money for the plants and the irrigation And of course, I had the kids to work with me to do the labor. That wasn't an issue. But we went cheap with it. So we did the micro irrigation. It's good for the bedded areas like we were talking about. So what we did is we came off. Well, this isn't exactly, but you've seen it in the video, but it was a battery operated timer. It had the female end that screwed directly into the faucet. So, and then from there, we ran it into, we went with, this is inch. We ran it into inch, clamped that off, and then ran that directly to the plants and stuff. Very simple. And I told them, as long as you keep an eye on it, like you have to with all irrigation, to make sure somebody's not messing with it, or you don't have any breaks or changing your timer without you knowing about it, you're good. Okay, it is. Okay, so, yeah, that's got the female end unit screwed directly into the faucet. So these are nice. They're about $25. So that's, and it's pretty easy to use. They're very basic. It's got the general, like this one, for example, just has duration, how long you're gonna run it, the days you're gonna run it, and that sort of thing. So they're not too difficult to use. All right, so with that, what we did was we went ahead and did the stakes. This is a complete assembly. And then we used, see, I'm already losing them. Okay, I was afraid of this, Trey. After you talk, I knew this was gonna happen. And then they just, when I start, that's it. Anyhow, okay, so there's different types of spray heads. This one sprays in, I think this one does more of a 180, and then some of them do more of like a 360 pattern, like these. Okay, so you can switch those out. You just screw the one off and screw the other one down. Understand? Am I boring you? Because, does everybody need to stretch? Okay. Okay. All right. So to put the microjet assembly into the pipe, you just use one of these plungers. Okay, pop a hole in it. And then it is kind of difficult sometimes when you gotta get a lot of pressure on top of it. Make sure you hear that little pop. Okay, then you know it's in there. All right, so that's how that works. One thing, when you start pulling stuff out and then pushing it back in, know that you're gonna be boring that little hole out. So you don't want to do that too many times, like switching stuff in and out if you can help it. Now, if you make a boo-boo and or you want to change things around, there's these little glue plugs that you can put in there. Okay, so which is always a good thing because we always do plug, right? And then the ones I like best as far as the bubblers are these, and Miss Tia had talked about these in the video. The nice thing about these is that they're adjustable. Okay, because let's say you had a bedded area and then you had a certain number of plants, and like we we're talking about, they're like a bigger plant, like a shrub or something like that. And so you open it up, especially to start with, the water them in good. But then after a while, you're like, I can kick that back a little bit. I don't need to get quite as much water. I can kick that back. Or let's say a shrub dies there and you want to just shut that down. You don't water that particular area, then you can shut it down. So that's a good thing. So I strongly recommend these if you want to look at it. It's up here in the bubbler section.
How do you put that into the tube?
Good question. So that's just gonna go ahead and
Same
pop a
thing.
hole and pop that right in, straight on. Okay. Any questions so far with anything? Good. All right, so this is the spaghetti tubing. So like on this, if you can actually get it in the long run, let's say you want to bring one out a good distance, you could. Okay, and you can just cut that to length or whatever length. The
Larger tubes.
Less
break
pressure.
down.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead. What'd you say? No, I wasn't gonna strike you. I just was holding this a certain way. It looked like maybe I would swing it, but no, go ahead. Go ahead, finish. By all means.
No, it's like using the larger tube, that's your lateral lines. He always does it out there. Your lateral lines is going to be your larger tube. Main thing is to get your water from one spot to the next spot. To get your pressure is using the smaller tubes he's showing you. That gets you the better pressure coming out of each head. Right, Dave?
Yes, yes, of course. Well said, Troy. Well said. Thank you.
I know you had it.
Yes, Jim.
How do you put the smaller tube to the bigger one?
Okay, so it's gonna be popping a hole in there.
Okay,
And then you're gonna have the little end. Okay, one thing with irrigation, just in general. You always are not gonna have the right parts. That's a given. Okay? You think you're going to the project and you're like, oh yeah, I'm set, I'm good, I got this. And then sure enough, you're 5 minutes in, you're like, doggone, I don't have the right parts.
It took us 2
They're
days.
coming back, all right, I'm bringing the audience back, I don't. All right, wonderful. I thought I was losing them, but they're coming back in, thank you. Starting to get a little nervous up here. Okay, so yes. Just use this little point, these are good to have, okay? And make sure that you kind of write everything out the best you can and try to think about now, okay? I'm going to, for example, I know I'm gonna tie into the faucet, so I'm gonna have my timer because I want to be able to control my time. And then, well, from here, I've got to go from here and down into the poly tubing. So how am I gonna get to this? And then from here, okay, now I gotta take the poly tubing, I'm gonna run it down here, and then I'm gonna do a sharp angle here. So that means I'm gonna need a 90. So then I find a 90. Oh yeah, well, when I put the poly tubing on, I gotta make sure that on my different PVC pieces, my couplers and stuff that stays on there, so I'm gonna need my clamps there.
Reducers.
Yeah. And now I have a clamp on here. Oh yeah, and with the clamps, I've got to squeeze the clamp on there, so I gotta have this little clamping tool. See what I mean? That's how you run into stuff. Like if you don't think it through in your head before you start the project, you will not have everything, and you probably still will not have everything. Now, that's where these kits are nice, because they're supposed to have everything. Now, for a certain distance and for a certain type of project. That doesn't mean you won't be going back up to the store a few times to get the project done. That's just the way irrigation works. And it's a lot of plastic pieces working in unison, all right, that can easily break, let's be honest. You know, whether you mow the grass yourself or somebody else does it, you can about guarantee that one of these pop-ups doesn't go back down like it's supposed to. And what happens when the mowing guys come by? Whack, and there goes your pop-up. Okay, so if you're not checking irrigation like this Steve was talking about, you're gonna have issues. And you know, if you're running your, even though, yes, you are supposed to water early morning, but if you're not up at 5 a.m. to see it running, you need to at least look for big, like maybe in the bedded area, you got dirt washed out or something like that, or you got puddles of water, then that means you have a problem. Okay, so keep an eye on that because that's a common problem. Okay, and people have their rain sensors off. So they're running their irrigation when it's, I see it yesterday. We got home from my swim lesson. I got home and I looked out and I got two neighbors got their impact sprinklers out, water in the yard, it's pouring rain. Okay, so they needed to have them running, obviously. Okay, but they didn't know, maybe they weren't home, maybe they didn't notice, whatever the case was, just keep that. Okay, so that way we could save water. Trying to think anything that I'm missing on the. What's that?
Those things, how you connect them.
Yeah, I thought we had it all right.
What's that?
How to connect them pipes together. There's a lot of fittings that goes
Oh,
with
yeah.
these pipes.
Yeah, there's a lot of fittings. I'm sorry, I didn't. I thought Troy was gonna bring them up here. He said he had them and then he dropped the ball up here. But
Well, it's like this one right here. Remember these fittings shut, Dave? You're aggravating me. Y'all turn your heads just for a second. They've got all kinds of different kind of heads, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
They have the T's like this one, they have the couplings like this one. Like if I had to add on from this pipe to a different pipe, the same size, you shove that in right there. Just push it in real hard. Well, ain't gonna work.
I don't care for those.
Yeah, they
I
don't
care
work
for them
both
because they'll pop off on you, and it's gonna create a problem. The kind I like is the kind that have a little barbed ends, and then you're gonna have to muscle those on there. Okay, wet them, and then muscle them on, but make sure you have that clamp on first, and then put it on, and then have the crimping tool to put that clamp down nice and tight, so that'll keep it on there again. So,
It's gonna be something like that bar.
yeah, something like that.
That bar right there. You push that in. Yes, the 3/4. Dave types everywhere. Once you get that all pushed in right there, there's gonna be a little clamp. I'm just knocking everything over. Dave. And then you can screw that in there, but a lot of these bars, they come in all kind of different T's, shapes, they come in just couplers, where you can couple two together.
You can couple different size on.
Different sizes, you can couple it together. Like I said, you come off your main pipe, your main thing you want to do, like Dave was talking about. Come off with the larger pipe first. You want to get your volume to where you want to go. And then off that pipe right there, you can couple. You know, coming off to the side like this right here with your T. And that's the problem. When me and Dave was looking for all this stuff, we only could find half of it.
And that's what I was just referring to. We do a lot of irrigation work here. We didn't have everything that we wanted to have right there, ready to go. You know what I mean? It's always run into the store, grabbing this, a few pieces of this, a few pieces of that. Again, have those backups on hand, have those parts ready to go in your plan if you're putting in new irrigation. I would like to say you could walk into a Lowe's or Home Depot and they would be able to help you, but if I'm being honest, that's probably not gonna happen. These days, it's not. Okay, they're probably not. Now you go into an irrigation store specifically to sell irrigation stuff, then those folks should be able to help you. Okay, they're more versed in knowing this stuff, okay? This is drip line, okay, but it has the built-in emitters. It's what we have in a vegetable garden and throughout the garden in different spots. Okay, it's nice, okay, because it has a built-in little dripper in there and you can feel the little bumps on them and stuff, but they clog up. It's just the slightest little bit of sand, which we have a lot of here in Florida, as you know. Okay, we'll clog these up. All right, and what happens when you clog them up? What do? Well, we tried to kind of bore that hole out a little bit. I took I think it was a paper clip and I went in there and I worked that around. Remember, Miss Tia said, try to get those cleaned up. And I did. I went through and I cleaned them. Well, some of them I think it helped. And then the other ones, shooting the water straight out. Shooting the water straight out. Okay, so it's not what we wanted. So that's the disadvantage with the built-in emitters versus having some bubblers on there that, like, if you went, a lot of times that on my last job particularly, I did something more so with the 1/2-inch line like this. And then now we got a T in there, okay, and then like we was talking about, we got that clamp on there. And then you see how that takes a little work to get that on there, but if you moisten that, you know, and then you squeeze that on there. Okay, and then you put that clamp on there. And then you have this crimping tool. And then you can see, you bring it down a little, you'll put it right on the edge and about right there, crimp that down and now you're good. Now try pulling that, see if you can pull that off there to my point. Okay, all right, so This is what I like, because then with that, now I can use something like this bubbler. Which I really like these, like I said, that I like them a lot, they're really cool. All right, pop that directly in. Now I can set that the way I want, I can open it up. I can get it so where it just slowly drips, just a fine little drip, because you'd be surprised how much water these bubblers put out. You think that it's not putting out a lot of water, but it is. You can put out gallons of water. Okay, depending on how long you have it out. Because be careful about that, running it too long, thinking, well, it doesn't even look like it's really running, but you see it dripping slowly, but oh, it doesn't look like much. I'm gonna have to run it for hours. You don't need to run it for hours, trust me. You don't. Okay, because it's gonna put out quite a bit of water. How do we know how much water we're putting out? At once, what's a way to check how much water we're putting out in, like, say, a minute? Like, if we want to check, do we know?
A cup. should-
We could put a cup or a 5-gallon bucket under a spigot and then time it and run it for a minute and see how much water we're getting in the 5-gallon bucket. Is a good way to check. So that's what I generally do. That'll give you at least an idea how much water you're putting out. Give you a gauge. Yeah, and then that. Yeah,
Pressure gauge.
you have a pressure gauge?
Yeah, right up to your faucet. Tells you how much pressure is coming out of that faucet. Anything under 20, around 20 or under, you got something leaking or you got something bad pressure. So most of your pressure in your houses are gonna be running from 40 up to 65 pounds. Well, I've seen some at 80. So.
Good?
So we're gonna start to wrap it up. Now, did everybody get a raffle ticket? Raise your hand if you didn't get a raffle ticket. Raffle ticket, everybody got one? Because we do have prizes at the end. So here's some various micro irrigation kits that you can buy, and they range in price, you know, from $20 to over $100. So you really have to look at, you know, what is the, you know, what are the components of it? You know, is it a micro spray kit? Is it a bubbler kit? What does it have on it? Like this one looks pretty comprehensive here. You know, this is maybe just a basic system for a 10-foot run or something. And this one looks like it can irrigate.
Is
longer.
that price from the Mr. Landscape?
These are just different brands.
Oh, different brands.
Yeah,
Oh.
different brand. This kit here costs about 25 bucks. You know, they have different, one for a patio, they have one for a garden, which is a little bigger. And then don't forget about your micro irrigation problem. So in this case here, this is one of our garden beds. This one is working, but this one is not working. And how can you tell it's not wet? And so we're getting a little gap in here. This little plant is not getting watered. That one, we could shift it over a little bit more to water it. And Brandon's gonna be passing out our end of the class surveys here. If you guys can just fill those out. What's the problem here with this drip system? They wrapped around the tree a couple times. Is that sustainable in the long run? No. We're gonna have to cut that off and do something about that, maybe putting a different system.
Yeah, we've done some of that out here.
Yeah. Then another way you can do, instead of making it a wrap around, just make it like a T where it goes off one to each side of the tree instead of wrapping around the tree. Because that was probably fine when that was a baby oak tree, but now 20 years later, it's not very good. So we're gonna have to fix that. This is what I'm saying. There's always these little irrigation problems you're gonna have to fix. And so that concludes our presentation today. Brenda is passing out the class survey, if you can take that, and I will invite Carrie back up to do the raffle, to raffle off our prizes. And you guys feel free to stick around afterwards and come look at our irrigation cards and ask any questions, all right? Thank you.
A lot of people make these irrigation things difficult. They think that they're making them more complicated than they are. They're making them easier and easier to work with. Once you get the basics down, you got no problem.
I have a couple questions. For example, is there an advantage to the water part by cutting the grass at the top, so the roots go longer?
To cut the grass.
If you cut the grass taller and the roots go longer, so you need less water.